Hey everybody, this is going to be a quick introduction for week one. This is mostly covering stuff that we would have done during week one class. You can use this video as a refresher or in case you missed the week one class. I'm going to be showing you sort of how to set up a new file in Blender, how to navigate Blender, and we're also going to look at the basics of adding primitive shapes and how to manipulate God fucking damn it. Okay, final fucking take. Let's do this. Hey everybody, in this first video, I'm going to be showing you how to open and use Blender, how to navigate Blender, how to navigate 3D space, how to use primitive objects, and how to do some basic object manipulation, moving, scaling, rotating within Blender. Now, this is mostly going to be a refresher on everything that we've done during our week one class. So this is good to do if you know you want to go over the content again, or in case you missed that first class. Awesome. So just quickly, I'm using Blender 2.92. I believe this is the most recent version. I'm actually just using Blender through Steam. This is an option for yourself as well. It just makes it a little bit easier. It keeps it always up to date. That's just sort of why I use it there. Cool. Now, when you first set up Blender on your home computer, you will get some additional options that you'll need to go through before you can get to this stage. You'll have some options there. I believe that's the option to choose what the left and right mouse click does. I would make your left your normal sort of mouse click. That's a bit of a holdover from older Blender. And you want to make your spacebar a search. That should be an option within there. Cool. Once you've done those, you'll get to this sort of layout here. We can choose your new file type, and you can also see any recent files. I might show some of those later. So for us, we're just going to be using a general file. We're not making 2D animation. We're not sculpting. We're not doing video editing. Those are all things you can do during Blender, but not when we're doing a little 3D crash course. So you can open that up. Cool. Now, before we get into things, I'll just quickly point this out as well. I have got my Blender scaled in quite a bit. I've got bad eyesight, and also hopefully it makes it a little bit easier to see when you're watching this, you know, in a video as well. If you want to do that for yourself, for whatever reason, you can go into your preferences, which I have lost in Edit, Preferences, Resolution Scale. It's really cool, makes it a lot easier. Awesome. So when you open a new Blender file, if you haven't made any changes to anything, you'll probably see this. You'll see that we've got some sort of light happening here, this camera, we've got our little cube, and we can see on the side, we've got our little hierarchy as well. Now, quickly, what I like to do is I just like to switch over to this modeling tab. There's not any major differences. It just really gets rid of the animation playback, the animation timesheet at the bottom, which we're not using at the moment. And yeah, just sort of like makes it a little cleaner for us. So that's the first thing that I would do. Now, if we're looking at Blender, it's quite overwhelming. There's a whole many things here. So you can see at the moment, we've got some options down the side. These are our tools. We're currently in editing mode because we switched to modeling. You can always switch back to your different modes through this tab or using the actual tab button. So for today, we're going to stay just in object mode to learn the basics. So click tab or use that tab to switch back to the object mode. Cool. We have some other options up the top. We'll get to those in a second. These are our different rendering options, whether we want to see everything as a wireframe. I sometimes like to do that for different reasons. Sort of filled in, and these ones will be the more rendered ones, which will depend on our lighting and our texturing as well. For the moment, we're going to stay within the viewport shading or in the wireframe if you prefer that for yourself. We have our little axes navigation. Again, this should be very similar or very familiar from Unity. So if you want to see your model from a particular viewpoint, you can use this. And you can also use your numpad keys, if you have that on your keyboard, to get to those specific view options as well. This is really good if you're trying to make sure that something looks symmetrical or is lined up properly. Cool. We'll keep going through navigating the workspace before we get to how we can move around in 3D. So all left on the right-hand side over here, we have our scene. Again, this should be familiar from, using something like Unity. This is our hierarchy of different objects. So we've got a collection, which is basically just a group of things here. We have a camera, which you saw before. Again, you can just sort of turn that off and on with the little eye. We've got our beautiful cube, the default cube, and we also have a light. So just for me, when I go to start modeling something new, I just get rid of, I might even delete, or I just turn off the camera and the light. We're not going to use them right now, not when we're modeling, and I find they get in the way. It can sometimes be annoying if you're trying to see things or click things and the camera's getting all up in the way there. So I just turn them off there. You also have another option here, but we might look at that a little bit later to sort of lock things. If I can find this for us. Not able to find that. That's okay. We'll get back to that later. This is one video, no takes. So we'll do that next week anyway. Cool. So once you have a little bit of a look around the general workspace, you've got a little bit familiar with it, we're going to start, working in 3D. So firstly, we need to know how to navigate in 3D. It's a little bit different. I think when we're using Unity, it's quite nice because we can literally use WASD like we're flying around in a game to sort of navigate, but we can't do that here. So we have to use some other things. So firstly, a lot of this uses your middle mouse wheel. So make sure you're using a mouse with a mouse wheel, middle mouse button. So some of the basics, to zoom in and out, you can just scroll on your mouse wheel. To rotate around whatever you have selected, you can just click and hold your middle mouse button, like so. To pan around, it's shift and holding middle mouse, like that. And to zoom onto a specific thing or zoom more quickly, you can use your control and your middle mouse button. Now, something you may have already noticed is that Blender has a really cool little feature where if you're seeing my mouse, it's actually, well, that's too far. It's actually wrapping around the program, which makes it really, really nice and easy if you're having to move a ton or zoom in a ton or rotate a ton really quickly. You don't have to sort of like, stop and then reset your mouse to do that. Cool. So that's the basics of navigating around. This is going to feel real clunky. You're going to forget the controls. It might be quite annoying, and this can be really frustrating when you start. You're like, I just want to be able to 3D model, but you're having to learn these new controls. Again, a lot of this stuff, practice makes perfect, and practicing a lot, practicing, a couple of times a week, even every day, even for 5 minutes, is going to allow you to build up that muscle memory so that this is really easy to do. Cool. So what we're actually going to do is we don't want this cube. We're going to make a little snowman out of some primitives, so I can show you how to add primitives and use the different object editing. So we're actually going to delete our cube. Now you can just click on it in the hierarchy and click your delete button. We can also right click and delete here. Cool. So now we have an empty scene. Again, if you get sort of like lost and you've moved your viewport around, you can always get it back to normal using your axes up here. Cool. So let's add in some primitive shapes. We can do that by going up to the top here next to our object mode. So again, we want to make sure we're in object mode, and you want to go to add, and we have a whole bunch of options. At the moment, we're going to stay on these meshes here. And we can add in what we call primitives. They're just basic shapes, basic 3D shapes that we can use. These are a really good starting point for when we're making a 3D model, particularly when we're making a placeholder. You can make something really quickly using basic shapes. And that's part of, something we're going to learn is looking at a 3D object and going, okay, what could I make this out of? What basic shapes could I make it out of? So for us, if we're going to make a snowman. A snowman is what, like 3 spheres on top of each other. Maybe it has a cylinder as its hat. Maybe it's got some more spheres for eyes, cylinders as arms, or even cubes as arms. And you can think about how you can manipulate those basic shapes to work for your placeholder model. Cool. We're just going to go through adding a single sphere. You've got 2 options. Let's just use the UV sphere. Just quickly, my brain always defaults to adding a circle, and then I get disappointed when I see this. Just make sure you are actually adding that sphere. Cool. So firstly, add a sphere and don't touch anything just yet. Once you add it, you'll see this option down here to add UV sphere. This actually gives you a whole bunch of controls over how many segments. This is basically how many polys are you adding to it. So if you add way too many, it looks really smooth. Like let's add way more. Oh, okay, I might have actually done too much for my computer. Excellent, and then it's gone all the way back down. Cool. So let's not do that, and we can just do that here. So, adding a lot more polys is going to make it look smoother, more high poly, but it's a lot more for a computer, even my computer right now, to render. So, it might be worse for optimization. So these are things to consider when you're just 3D modeling in general. And we're going to go all the way back down to, I think the default was something like 36. That looks good. So we have, a certain amount of rings and segments here where they look sort of roughly square. But the main things that we can change is that we can change the radius, how big we want this sphere to be. And we can also change its location, where it is within the world, and its rotation as well. Rotation on a sphere, not so important. So I'm just going to set those back to, I'm going to set those back to 0. I'm just going to set that back to 1. Cool. So let's just add our primitive by just clicking. Done. Now I have a sphere in my scene. Cool. So we'll make this the starting point for our snowman. We're going to add some extra spheres, some other things as well. So firstly, I want to make sure that my snowman is sitting on the ground. Now, if I go to sort of a front view, you can see that it's sort of falling into the ground if this red line is our x-axis. And just because we want it to export nicely, we want to make sure that this bottom bit is just touching the ground here. So I need to actually move it up. So when we're using Blender, we can manipulate our objects. We can simply manipulate our objects with moving or transforming or grabbing, rotating and scaling. Again, you should be familiar with these from using Unity. Now, the shortcuts for these are just here. We have G for grab, R for rotate, and S for scale. So it all kind of makes a lot of sense. So let's just have a look at what those do, and we'll look at that in not a specific view. So if I click G when I have my object selected, that's the other thing, make sure it has that little orange highlight. Not selected, clicking G, not going to do anything. Selected, clicking G, I can now move it around in 3D space. Obviously, this can be a little confusing, so we'll come back to how we control the movements of all of these things in a second. If you want to not do whatever you're doing, you can just right-click. So I don't want it to go over there, I can just right click. If I do want it to go over there, I can left click. And we can just undo anything that we need to with Control Z as usual. So R is going to rotate it. Again, it's a sphere, so it doesn't make too much difference for us. We're going to unclick that. And we can scale with S, which I'm sure makes a lot of sense there. Cool. Now, one of the major things to get used to with using Blender is how you edit along particular axes. So to sort of explain here, when I grab my sphere, I'm able to move it generally in any sort of way that I want. And I'm just realizing, actually, that's brand new. Blender has now included nice controls all along the bottom here. So that's actually going to make our life so much easier. I don't have to have my little sticky notes up. That's literally changed since the last version. Great. Okay, cool. Anyway, so yes, we can always refer to that bottom tab for all of the controls now, I guess. I love that. So yeah, when I grab a object in general, I'm moving it sort of unconstrained in any way I want. Now, obviously, that might be something that you want to do, but for us, we want to make sure what we're really trying to do at the moment is move this sphere up so that it's not sitting below the ground. So I want to move it upwards, and our up axis is our Z axis in Blender. So I'm going to select my object, click grab to move it, and I'm going to click Z. Now, this adds the blue line in, and you can see that if I go to move, I'm only moving it up and down now. So I can move it up. That's looking mostly good. So what we can do here is we can check. It doesn't need to be perfect, especially for today. So now I'm locked to this perspective, and let's do that again. Let's grab it on the Z axis only and try to get it as nicely against the bottom there as possible. Again, we can, we can work out ways to make this a little bit more perfect in the future, but just for today, that's fine. Cool. So yeah, to get out of a specific mode, I'm just using the middle mouse button to rotate out. Awesome. So now you can see I've got the starting bit of my snowman just sitting on the ground there. So let's make some more things. Now, obviously, I can go back to my primitives and I can add another, let's do that. Let's add another sphere using the primitives. This time, let's actually use the options that we have to begin with. This actually means that we won't have to make any changes, through our editing tools, and we can just do it all as we're adding the primitive there. So, maybe it should sit like that. We want to make this one smaller, so we can move that back down as well. I think that's looking pretty good. Maybe, I've never made a snowman, so I'm really going off like cartoons and stuff. So let's go with that there. Cool. Yeah, that's looking pretty good for a snowman already. Now this time, when we make our third one, let's copy and paste the one that we already made. If you've already done a lot of work, maybe you've got some complex thing, it's easy to copy and paste. Now we can duplicate an object really easy in Blender using Control D. No, we cannot. That is Unity that I'm messing this up with. Aha, Shift D. There we go. Knew it was something. Shift D, like that. Now I've duplicated it. You should be able to lock that to the Z axis so we can move it up. Very convenient. And let's just scale that down. Now again, when we're thinking about scaling at the moment, we just want to scale it in general, but we want to scale it so that it is scaled uniformly. But if we wanted to scale along a specific axis, we can absolutely do that. But we're not going to do that today. So let's just scale it all uniformly, and we'll bring that back down with our grab tool and using Z. Okay, that's not like a very cool snowman, but it's passable as a snowman. Awesome. So I'll just go through putting a little hat on the snowman, maybe giving the snowman a little cone carrot nose, which will be a cone shape. There we go. And we can give it some arms as well. So I'll just go through this. Feel free to follow along or make your snowman look cooler or whatever. So I'm going to add a cylinder to start the hat. This is going to be the brim of the hat. I've got a plan in mind. So I've just squished it down by changing the depth. I'm bringing it up using the location, the Z, and we'll actually bring that in. It doesn't need to be that wide of a hat. I don't actually want to change the vertices. That is my bad. And we'll do that there. Cool. Okay, start of a cool hat. Let's add another cylinder for the top of this hat. And you can see that when you go to add another of the exact same primitive, it's going to keep all of your options or most of your options there. So that is the wrong thing. This time we want to make it taller. Now you can see here, it doesn't really matter right now. We're making a very quick little 3D model just so that we have a bit of practice for today. But you can see that this model is actually, this the outline here is dropping really below where we need it to be. It's not a major issue. You can absolutely have shapes intersecting, especially when we're just starting and we're making placeholders. But just for neatness, we want to try to pull that up so that it's sitting nicely within the hat there. Cool. All right, starting to look like a little snowman. Again, remember that you can always have a look at how it's looking around the place. It can be quite easy to accidentally, have something a little out of whack, which it looks great or looks okay from the front, but it looks a little bit wonky from the side. This is like a snowman with a back problem now. Okay, that's me as a snowman. Stay on topic. Cool. So we're going to add a little cone for the nose. That's going to be sort of annoying to change through this. So I'm just going to do this by hand. So let's just scale it down. We're going to rotate it. We want to rotate it forward. And if you're looking at our axes here, I'm trying to point while doing this. We want to rotate it forward to us along that green axis, which is going to be our Y axis. No, my bad. It's going to be our X. Oh, wrong thing. So we're going to rotate with R and use X, to rotate it forward. Look, sometimes it's a bit trial and error. Again, I'm still learning Blender myself a little bit. So it's always good to just practice. Now we want to move this forward, obviously. So I'm going to look at it roughly from the side. We can look at it properly from the side. I'm going to grab it and move it along the Y axis. This is not the best nose yet, but we'll make, maybe we can actually scale it along our Y axis to make it longer. Yep. Scale it down in general because it doesn't need to be that big. We can rotate it along our X axis and we can move it back. Like a pretty big carrot nose, but that's okay. Maybe we can scale that up a bit more and then make it a little longer. Yeah, there we go. Cool. Pretty cool snowman thus far. And let's add some arms. So going to add, what should these be? Should these be cylinders or should they be, yeah, let's make them, I guess sticks as cylinders so we can make them sticks. All right, so now this one's going to be a little bit different because we want it to not be perfectly aligned. We want to put it to the side. That is the wrong side. We want to use X. There we go. We'll make it very small and longer. And we can actually rotate it here as well along, that's the wrong one, along our Y axis. Cool. And we can, that's the wrong thing. Oh, you have to fix my eyesight at some point. Okay, and we'll move it back in. Excellent. So we've got a little arm happening there. Cool. Now, let's duplicate this. We're going to Shift D to duplicate that. We'll just right click, so it should make a duplication of it, but it's not going to move it yet. Now, we want this to be perfectly, sticky note away. We want this to be perfectly sort of mirrored to the other side. And the easiest way to do that is actually just changing the values. So you might not be able to see it, but there's a very small little arrow. I'm going to move my sticky notes over here. Very small little arrow on the side here, which pops out all of your information for whatever your thing is, your transforms, location, rotation, scale. Again, pretty similar to what you would be used to from Unity. So you can see that cylinder 002, not well named, and cylinder 003 are on the same, they're in the exact same position. So let's grab our 003 one here. Yours might be named a little bit differently. And let's have a look at these values. So at the moment, this one is located 1.16 meters along the x-axis, sort of to the right. Now, we want it to be in that exact position, but on the other side. If you go back to your number line, if you remember from math, maybe in like grade 9, grade 8 math, you'll remember that number line. Now, if we want it to be the exact same different distance from the central point, but on the other side, we can very simply add a negative to it. And that goes for rotation as well. Instead of rotating it 54.7 degrees one direction, we just want to do it from the opposite. Done. This is a trick I use all the time. So if you just want to mirror something, I'm sure there might be probably a quicker mirroring tool, but if you're doing it by hand, you can just add those negatives in. We can put that away. Cool, excellent. So we have our snowman. He's looking pretty cool. Now look, this is, you know, not the best looking snowman in the world, but if you needed a placeholder and if you needed to make a placeholder in, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, this is probably more like 15 minutes. I don't have a timer on at the moment. This is a great starting point. It means that you have something that you can chuck straight into the game engine that is very representative of what the final thing might be. But it didn't take you a ton of time to make, which is sort of what we want to do when we're thinking and making placeholders. Think about how quickly, what's the quickest way I can make this thing? And for us, purely using primitives and not actually having to get into the sort of editing mode and the polygon editing just yet, is going to be a really efficient way to test placeholders. Cool. So a couple of final things. We can drag this down. Now, at the moment, we have every single thing as an individual shape. And that's an absolutely fine thing to do. You can keep it like that if you like. For today, I'll just show you how to do this. We're going to select everything. You can click and drag to select, or you can select it all through your hierarchy using Shift. Either way works absolutely fine. And just for today, just so it's one easy to export object, we're going to join these objects together. Now, the right click in Blender is very, very good. So all of your many, many options on things to do, you can pretty much always find through a right click. But the command that we're going to be using is Control J. We're going to join things together. So we can just click that, or we can click Control J. And now you can see up on our hierarchy over here, we just have one object, and we're going to call that snowman. Now, the reason you want to name your files, very similar to, using Photoshop, it keeps it clean. You don't have to join your things together. I'm just showing that so that you have that knowledge as well. This also means that I now have this snowman as one easy to manipulate thing. So if I wanted to duplicate this snowman, let's say, and make some variations of this snowman, let's move it out here. We can do that. So maybe we want to scale this one so we've got a short snowman. You can see that it's scaling and it's going to kind of like stretch things really weirdly and it's kind of ugly. I get that. But if you need a placeholder, this is going to work. Cool. So we got the 3 heights of our little snowman there. Awesome. That just might be a reason that you want to join things together, but we'll just delete these ones. Cool. So finally, let's just save out our file. Now we can easily go to File, Save, or Control S. You just pick where you want it to go. So I'm going to call it Snowman. We save the blend file, and you'll very easily be able to tell which files are your blend files because they have .blend on the end of them. And that's it. That's sort of everything I wanted to cover really quickly in this refresher sort of course. Now again, if you want to be able to open an existing file, you can go into, when you open Blender, it has the option, it should show you your recent files. You can always go File Open, or you can have a look at your recent ones here. So I've made some swords. I've not made some swords, I've moved that file. Pokemon? Excellent, cool. I've been making some 5-minute Pokemon so I can have a look and see how they're looking here. Cool. This activity should make sense. I'll explain this in class. But that way you can go and have a look at your previous files and you can just do that through there. Not save. Awesome. Cool. So again, I just really want to emphasize this might be really overwhelming to begin with. It's only going to get easier if you practice. So doing practice every single day, doing a silly little activity like making a 5-minute Pokemon or making another snowman or making a cooler hat for the snowman or whatever, is going to get you a lot more used to the controls, navigating the space, navigating 3D space in general. And it's going to allow you to get a lot quicker at 3D modeling. In the beginning, it might feel like, oh, I want it to look really good. It needs to be really good. But moving quickly and learning and getting quicker with how to use the tools is actually going to allow you to progress a lot quicker overall. Cool. That's it for today. I'll leave it there. Yeah, thank you for watching.